And so they teach that not only to other white people, but they teach it to the non-white people, the people that they classify as non-white themselves. And they say, now, if there's anybody even in your family that has darker skin than you, then that person is supposed to be treated in a more derogatory fashion. And it's a subliminal thing most of the time, but it manifests itself in everything that's going on the planet. And that's the white supremacist ideology. And the closer you are to being white, the better you're supposed to be treated. This is it. It's a very simple formula. And they say, but nobody is supposed to be treated to the very best, except those people classified as white. And then everybody else can fight among themselves about whether or not who's going to be the favorite dark-skinned person of the moment. But everybody will bow down to anyone who is classified as white. That's what the whole ideology is about. And they teach the dark-skinned people to hate themselves as individuals and anybody else that looks like them. This is why there's so much slaughter among the darker-skinned people of the world. They pounce on each other at every chance. They go looking for each other with the purpose of doing harm. Not to do anything constructive, not to even have a constructive conversation. It's all hostility. Pass each other on the street and look at each other. I mean, dart their eyes at each other with hostility. This is what it's supposed to be about. And the white supremacists have engineered this many years ago, and they have just about perfected it to the extent that the whole world is poisoned by this ideology and this practice. It's not just an ideology, it's a complete practice that covers all areas of activity: economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. And that's 24 hours a day, every day, everywhere on the planet Earth. And it's called the system of white supremacy.
That we are psychologically, culturally, financially, and politically out of step with history, because we are out of step with reality. We cannot continue to live fantasy. Now, I'm going to look at certain things, recent things, and explain the nature of the fantasy and the desired reality.
And while several drug companies continue working toward the FDA authorization for the vaccine, trial participants and doctors tonight want to let you know about the potential side effects. McKenna King walks us through what to expect and why it's actually a good thing.
Sure. So headache, which I would say mild, muscle pain, mostly in my legs, chills, and arm pain from where I received the injection.
Nick Casal is participating in the AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine trial in Orlando. It's a double-blinded trial, so he's still not sure whether he got the actual vaccine or the placebo.
There's a 70% chance that I got the active vaccine.
But based on his reaction, he believes he may be part of that 70%.
Nothing over the top, just a little under the weather for like 12 to 18 hours.
A reaction not unheard of. In fact, doctors are starting to warn people to be prepared for a potential set of mild side effects.
The initial safety trials showed about 50% of people will develop some grade of fatigue, and a little bit less will develop some grade of fever. It's not 100%, and most of the time it occurs after the second dose.
Dr. Michael Tang saying this is a normal reaction to any vaccine.
But then I got Hank Aaron takes it, and he's dead. Takes the first shot 2 weeks ago, takes another shot sometime after. They say they usually make you wait 2 weeks, and he's dead.
And welcome to our exclusive interview with Bill Gates, the entrepreneur, Microsoft co-founder, software developer, and philanthropist. Thanks for being here.
Great to talk to you.
The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation's annual letter has now just come out. You both write about how this pandemic, in your view, will be as defining as World War II. What are the key steps to take right now?
Well, we have to do two things at once. We have to bring this epidemic to an end, primarily by getting the vaccine out in large numbers to the entire world. And we have to make sure that we're ready because there will be another pandemic. And there's so many lessons about how we weren't prepared, how we should have handled things differently. And, you know, when that's clearly in our mind, those investments need to be made. One category we did well, which was getting R&D money out to the vaccine companies. The U.S. was the biggest at that. And so at least, you know, in that one area, where we set a model for the world.
COVID detecting dogs. They're a thing in America now, and they're making their debut in the NBA tonight. The Miami Heat allowing some fans in the stand. That's new for their game against the Clippers. Virus-sniffing dogs are set to walk past the fans as they arrive, just like you see here in this video that the league released. If the dog sits down, that means it's detected the virus, and the person and their party will not be allowed inside American Airlines Arena. Studies have found that dogs can actually sniff out COVID by detecting the smell of the virus in human sweat. But if you've been lucky enough to get a vaccine, no worries. Miami reports the dogs have been specially trained to sit down only when they detect an infection.
Completely clear, I do not want anybody to take this because I'm taking it. What I want to do is give you the information, the facts.
On COVID-19 vaccine and the Black community, a Tyler Perry special, which aired on BET Thursday night, the influential actor/director sat down for a conversation about the new Moderna and Pfizer vaccines and the hesitation that many Black people have to receive one.
I got a call from Grady Health System, one of the leading hospitals here in Georgia, asking if I would take the vaccine to show you all that it's safe. Well, when that question came to me, I thought, I got a lot of questions.
After recently admitting that he himself was skeptical to receive the vaccine, Perry stated that he needed to know all the facts in order to decide by the end of the 30-minute special if he would take the vaccine or not. Two of the biggest questions skeptics have about the vaccine are what are the immediate side effects and what are the long-term safety risks.
Most of the side effects from a vaccine occurred, like 90%, 95% of them occur in the first 2 months of the vaccine. So if you're going to have a problem with a vaccine, you're going to see it very early on. You don't tend to see it 6 months, a year, 2 years later.
While sitting down with infectious disease Dr. Carlos Del Rio and Professor of Medicine Kimberly Manning, Perry also learned that so far it may still be possible to get COVID-19 after receiving the vaccine.
You gonna give me the shot?
Done.
You finished?
Yep.
I didn't feel it. There you go. I got the vaccine. Here we go.
India news. 2 women die in Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, days after taking COVID-19 vaccines. A 42-year-old accredited social health activist worker in Andhra Pradesh's Guntur district died of brainstem stroke on Sunday, while a 45-year-old Anganwadi worker in Telangana's Warangal district died after complaining of burning sensation in her chest. A 42-year-old woman working as an accredited social health activist working in Andhra Pradesh's Guntur district died of brainstem stroke on Sunday, 4 days after she received COVID-19 vaccination, officials said.
The head of the LAUSD says one way to get kids back into class faster would be to turn their schools into vaccination centers. And Eyewitness News reporter Sid Garcia explains how this would work.
The Los Angeles Unified School District is asking the state for permission to use its more than 1,400 campuses as vaccination centers. Superintendent Austin Butner says the district already has the infrastructure in place to do this.
We have an information system to schedule the appointments, to make sure that the data is reported to the right authorities, and to make sure you follow up your appointment. We have licensed vaccination clinics already at schools and clinicians licensed to provide the vaccine.
The superintendent says the schools can supplement what's already been established. One of the concerns with the roll-up is that there isn't enough doses and personnel to meet the demand. Bittner says the doses are up to the state to distribute. As far as personnel are concerned, they're already in place.
So we have almost 600 school nurses who are capable of providing the vaccine itself. So all the infrastructure is in place. Now that's maybe unique to Los Angeles Unified. Some other school districts may not have the school nurses, they may not have the COVID testing system and IT system in place with Microsoft. We have the commitment from Anthem, Blue Cross, and HealthNet to provide additional clinicians.
The superintendent sent a letter to the state capitol asking to be able to use its schools to vaccinate teachers, students, and neighborhood residents. He's hoping to start vaccinations by February 1st.
Black people just don't get it.
All right.
We just don't get it.
Wall Street bracing for another roller coaster as trading resumes in volatile stocks like GameStop after the trading site Robinhood suspended purchases Thursday. This after the New York Attorney General announced an investigation into Robinhood's activity. The company's CEO saying they halted purchases on several companies, including GameStop, AMC Theaters, BlackBerry, and Bed Bath & Beyond.
So we haven't really seen anything like this before, and to prudently manage the risk and the deposit requirements, we had to restrict buying in these 13 stocks.
TD Ameritrade also restricted transactions, angering politicians on both sides of the aisle. Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez tweeted, "This is unacceptable. We now need to know more about Robinhood app's decision to block retail investors from purchasing stock, while hedge funds are freely able to trade stock as they see fit." And in a rare move, Republican Senator Ted Cruz agreed with Ocasio-Cortez. All this market frenzy began when amateur traders banded together in online chat forums like Reddit to boost the stock of struggling video game retailer GameStop and overthrow Wall Street hedge funds who were shorting the stock, betting that GameStop would fail. The amateur traders helped force shares up by 1,700%, costing the hedge funds more than $5 billion. One hedge fund had to be bailed out by other firms. Jamie Rogozinski, who started the Reddit page Wall Street Bets, says there's a reason his page has attracted millions of small-time investors.
You make money, right? You're beating them at their own game.
I have been personally the victim of physical attack, which was the offspring of racial and political hysteria. I've lost friends and relatives through cancer, war, lynching, drug addiction, alcoholism, mental illness, and murder. And I've come into maturity, as we all must, knowing that greed and hatred and brutality and indifference, and perhaps above all else, ignorance abound in this world.
Your long, illustrious career, what are you most proud of?
That I'm still here.
You won't know how come I lived so long.
A very good life. You're going to do something big.
I think it's a shame that I would have to be known as the most foremost black actress of our time. Why? Because I would like to be known as a good actress of our time.
Across 8 decades in show business, the veteran of TV, the stage, and screen earned a reputation for playing strong women, netting her countless honors.
All these awards that come...
What's up? But Cicely also gained recognition for fighting for equality, earning the Presidential Medal of Freedom and a Kennedy Center honor.
It wasn't money that I was interested in. I was interested in making an impact on people of the world about us as a race of people. I can.
You literally can't. Oprah, Ava DuVernay, Kerry Washington, so many women of color in Hollywood were mentored by the icon.
How does that feel when you look back over this audience of all these women you inspired?
To have done what I did and make a mark, I did what I was supposed to do. I knew ultimately that if I married anybody, it would be Miles Davis.
She found love with the legendary jazz trumpeter, but when they first started dating in the 60s, Cicely nearly left the business entirely.
I was perfectly willing to give it up then and just be with him. People began to make both of us very conscious of the fact that I had a talent which was being wasted and that I should really get back to work, and he began to feel a little guilty about it too.
After her film career took off in the 70s, they finally said I do in 1981.
How does it feel to be married? I'm deliriously happy. I could not be happier, really.
Their marriage would ultimately end in divorce in 1989, 2 years before his death. But Cicely would continue to honor Miles every year.
I go down to a club where Miles used to play every year on my birthday.
Ain't got no husband, ain't got no boyfriend, and you hold up in this bed like the Queen of Sheba.
As for her TV family, Cicely Tyson was honored when Viola Davis asked her to play her mom on How to Get Away with Murder, but she went a little too messy her first day on set.
Viola was standing at the door to welcome me, and because in the script she and her mother had an estranged relationship, I just walked right by her.
The role earned Cicely 5 Emmy nominations. She won 3 Emmys, an honorary Oscar, Peabody, Tony, and in 2020 was inducted into the TV Hall of Fame at age 95. But despite all the recognition,
don't ever give up.
Cicely Tyson was never ready to slow down, especially in her fight for equality.
The day that I think that I have arrived, I'm finished. I am still striving to get where he wants me to go. I'm a fighter. I was born a fighter. I will die a fighter. And I will fight all obstacles and probably die trying. But it's not going to stop me.
Welcome everyone to Countering Racism, White Supremacy Radio. Thanks for tuning in. I am one of the hosts, 0526. And if you missed the beginning, we played 2 clips by Neely Fuller Jr. and Henry E. Clark. And those clips and those scholars, counter-racist scholars, are essentially what this radio broadcast is about. Learning and countering racism, white supremacy, until there's justice on planet Earth.
Nobody ever lets go of life without
So we're going to
something else.
comment on
Nobody knows whether you can take a memory with
some of
you
the
or not.
so-called news
Maybe
you
it's
just
just
heard,
a face, a melody,
which is mostly lies, and racism, white supremacy. And then we're going to open up the lines for the listeners to chime in. But getting started, does any of the other hosts have anything they want to say?
Hello, can I be heard?
Yes, Quaku.
05. I just wanted to comment about what I heard. You know, I heard a lot about the side effects of the vaccine. A lot of people. I wasn't sure if it was doctors who were taking the vaccine themselves and giving their testimony, or whether it was people part of a trial. Whoever it was, you know, they made it seem, you know, that, you know, using these vaccines and these side effects should be taken lightly. You know, talking about how the numbness, you know, the tingling, using words to describe it, such as it's not phrases really, talking about it's not so bad, and anything compared to the actual virus. You know, using certain phrases and words to encourage people to maybe seek out the vaccine, and you know that it potentially whatever happens is a better result than the act of actually attracting the virus. So I saw a lot of that, and we as, you know, black people, and non-white people need to be aware of our relationship with the medical, the medical industrial complex in this country, especially, and how, sorry, and how, we've been experimented on in the past, where, where numerous black people have, testified that they've been experimented on. Things have been taken away from them, like their fertility. Many have been sterilized, losing limbs, so on and so forth. So, sorry again. So I say all that to say, we should definitely not be taking these things lightly, just because news might, portray that these are the better options, or in some cases the lesser of two evils, that we should all abide by it and take it willingly. That's what I have to comment so far. I have other notes, but I don't want to hog it.
Yeah, I think it's very, I think black people should take note on how Tyler Perry is being used, because yesterday I came across another video where Tyler Perry is talking about COVID and talking about how black people are more susceptible to COVID due to their vitamin D deficiency. And I'm like, why can't we get a black scientist to tell us this stuff? Why are they using Tyler Perry to tell us this? And I suspect it's because the usual suspects believe black people to be really silly, and people who believe and take advice from people like Tyler Perry. So a good example of being racially showcased, which is when white supremacists put people in front of non-white people's faces to make us believe that racism is going away or racism has disappeared. But it's just a show. Tyler Perry is being racially showcased, and it's an example of how stupid the white supremacists believe black people to be by taking his advice for some reason. And I asked the question again, why can't we get black doctors to give us this advice? Why must there be a entertainer telling black people, hey, to get a so-called vaccine? Any other hosts want to chime in?
I'd like to bring it, but this is Kwaku once again.
But Kwaku, one sec. I'd like to just comment very quickly on what 0526 and what you also said. I'll be very short. This is Kwaku Jabal speaking. I would like to say, 0526 did a very great job of detailing the confusion that was going on and a lot of that. That's the biggest theme for me, is that, all the various and numerous reports, are just straight confusing. Just utterly confusing. And if there's one thing I know, is that when something confuses me, I ask questions, and if you can't answer my questions, then it's just not going to work out for me.
Well, thank you for that. Yeah, so definitely clearing up the confusion, because when you put up an entertainer, like Tyler Perry, somebody being racially showcased, it can definitely leave some of us confused, like myself. And me asking the question, why can't we get some kind of black scientist to talk about this, someone with some credibility? But like 05 said, the white supremacist thinks that black people are silly. And there's one part on there, and I'll try not to laugh, but these COVID detecting dogs. I'm supposed to believe that dogs can detect COVID through sweat. But these dogs can't be trained to sniff out racism. They can detect COVID, which is something brand new. But racism has been here on the planet for millions of years, and there hasn't been one solution to it. But now we have COVID detecting dogs. I see these COVID detecting dogs as another opportunity for mistreatment, quite honestly. I could see them, I don't know why an animal like a dog would be used, given the history between non-white people. And I don't know if you guys caught it as well, but they said that these dogs are going to be at NBA
Quick, sorry to cut you off, but yes, completely. What a waste of resources. I just had to throw that in there while we were still on the topic. What a waste of resources.
Yes. So these dogs are going to be out at the NBA. It's primarily non-white people attending these, or non-white people being involved. So I don't seem, insensitive or a part of the plan to use dogs.
Hi, this is Heirloom. I wanted to add on to what Quakely said. I agree. I think the whole having dogs. First of all, the person said that the dogs can sniff COVID, but not if you had the vaccine. So I don't understand what exactly is this dog sniffing for? Is it sniffing, because I would be suspecting that it's sniffing for whatever antibodies would be produced, but if you have the vaccine, then you would also be producing the antibodies. So I think it was just a lot of confusion in that they were not explaining the process. And I also do think it's a great infringement on people's rights. And like Quaker said, dogs have been used as agents of white supremacy many times. So it's a very frightening situation. I also wanted to add that I thought it was very interesting in the segment about Cicely Tyson, how they named the people who were influenced by her women of color, even though all these people were Kerry Washington, I think Viola Davis, other obviously black women, but they could not say black women for some reason. They had to say women of color, which I thought was very interesting. And I'll mute my line.
Cicely Tyson, I thought. She used a phrase in there that, I'd like to decode. And something that, throughout history we see black people doing. And she said she was hoping to make an impact for the race. For me, the biggest impact you can make is to end racism and white supremacy. Making an impact as an actor, I'm sorry, it doesn't end racism, nor does it solve the problem. Unfortunately for her, may her soul rest in peace. Unfortunately for her, she was a very confused victim of the system. Not really knowing how to go about ending this problem. She said a lot of things, and for me, it all seemed very confusing for me. Every non-white person should be trying to solve this problem. Unfortunately, she's another individual who's being racially showcased. So.
Yeah, I also thought if you really understand racism, white supremacy, what it is and how it works, it was kind of like a slap in the face the way that she's been being portrayed in the news, because she's always they like to play her clips where she's like, I wanted to do good for black people, I wanted to make a impact, and I didn't want to. And then I've also heard a clip of her saying that she didn't want to play any roles that made black people look bad. But then when you look at a movie like Sonder, which she's celebrated for being in, Sonder is a movie where she plays a black female whose black male partner is can't support the family, so-called family, is thrown in jail, and she's left fending for herself with her as a single parent. And I'm like, how is this a good representation for black females and for black people? So she did take on so-called, she did take on roles that get her glorified and just weren't good for black people to be presented as. But it's not her fault. It's the people who practice racism. It's the usual suspect. She just was another victim. And yes, may her soul rest in peace. Any other hosts want to chime in before I open up the line?
Yeah, I agree with that, actually, 0526. I thought it was also interesting that she said something about, not wanting to be seen as a black actress, but as just an actress. And then I think at one point she said that she wanted other people to change the way that they viewed black people, which I thought was kind of unfortunate, because I think too much time people spend trying to make other people view black people as human instead of, black people coming together to end racism, white supremacy.
Very well said, Heirloom. Very well said. I agree. Lastly, on Cicely Tyson, and taking up roles to make black people seem well and good. Thank you for the example of 05. Definitely painted a picture. Also on the news, on the segment, it also talked about her role with Viola Davis, because I also noticed that she played they described it as an estranged mother, and so her ignoring her or treating her coldly, and that brings up another question. How does that reflect positively on the black community? Something to think about.
Well, on the show, How to Get Away with Murder, this is CJ. Eventually they mend their relationship. She had trauma that her mother kind of ignored when she was younger that she went through. So they had to kind of revisit the trauma that she was going through in order to fix and mend that relationship.
Okay. I've never seen the show, so thank you for that. That brings up another question I have, and sometimes often that I see in a lot of these programs, is in order for black people to find peace or love, will they always have to struggle and go through strife? Do their lives have to be torn apart and come to tatters before they can find some peace? I don't know how old these women, these characters are, but for so many years, she had to live with that traumatic experience, and that seems to be the common theme on these programs. Black people need to experience trauma. Black people need to experience death. Yeah, well said.
Of white supremacy, that's all we do experience is trauma, death, frustration, and anger. And maybe in Cicely Tyson, she probably felt like she couldn't be the only one who was playing the role and doing everything. So maybe she got tired and kind of just tried to guide the youth, except for just trying to take on everything herself.
Alrighty. I want to make my final comments before I'm ready to open up the lines. I thought all the COVID vaccination stuff very reminds me of chapter 25 of the ISIS papers, which Dr. Francis Cresswell mentions the Tuskegee experiment and how black people for 40 years they thought they were being helped. They thought they were being treated by the medical industrial complex, so-called doctors. For 40 years, they thought they were being treated for syphilis, but they were actually being experimented on, and none of them were being treated, but they were being studied. So this is why it's very healthy for a black person to be suspicious of what white people are telling them to do, what they're getting black people to tell them to do. So or not tell anyone to get or not to get the vaccine. Just study it. Just do some research about, hey, why are they telling black people? Why are they making such a big deal about black people to get this and not everyone?
Thing I have to say about the COVID vaccine is the doctors and the people that work on the vaccine, they really don't know any side effects or long term. They only know long term side effects. So meaning that eventually down the line you can catch an autoimmune disease. So, diabetes, multiple sclerosis, et cetera, et cetera. Eventually down the line, this is a vaccine that you're not just going to take one time. You're going to take, like, you take the flu shot every year. So you got to consider, is this what I want in my body for the long haul of me not lasting long? If studies already show that people of color, non-white, don't live long through this virus anyway, you're putting yourself at risk with vaccination as well.
Yeah, I wanted to add this is Heirloom again. I was reading an article today that said that Rita Hanks, Tom Hanks' wife, if you guys recall, they had COVID early on, and she said that she no longer has the antibodies in her system, which means that you can get COVID multiple times, right? It took about 10 months for the antibodies to leave her system, which means you can get COVID multiple times, which means, like what CJ was saying, you will probably be vaccinated multiple times, whether that be every year, like the flu, or different. So I think that that's something that people should take into consideration. And it's also very confusing because I hear a lot of reports about even when you have the vaccine, you can still get it. And then simultaneously, there's people talking about a new variant of the vaccine that's in South Africa and I think England, and I think it may have showed up here. And I'm wondering, I just think that they're really not informing us. Like, we're constantly hearing about COVID, but we're getting the same stories over and over, and we're not getting actual information in terms of, like, okay, is this new variant different from the one that we have to the point where there's going to be a different vaccine for it? I don't know if anyone can answer that question that's in this radio broadcast, but that's something I'm interested in.
All right, everybody, to open up the line. Alright, if you're just tuning in, welcome to CRWS Radio, *61 to ask questions or give a comment. Again, press *61 if you would like to ask a question or comment. Can I be heard?
Yes, you can.
Yes.
Alright, again, *61 if you would like to ask a question.
Yeah, anyone who's listening to the broadcast, I'm interested in your thoughts about the vaccine. Have you gotten the vaccine? Do you know anyone in your family or your survival unit or your associates that have gotten the vaccine? Any side effects? Any thoughts about the vaccines in general? Would love to hear that. And also, if you, just in general, what your thoughts are about COVID.
Yeah, the lines are open, everyone. we'll be starting up the next segment. And
We can give some time for people to gather their thoughts. Do any of the hosts have any other thoughts about any of the news?
Yeah, for me, it's 0526. I'm that highly suspicious of COVID, and highly suspicious of the vaccine. I'm very much aware that COVID is real, but I'm not in a rush to get any vaccine. I've been doing too much reading, and I've gotten too great of a grasp of what I believe to be happening due to the system of racism and white supremacy. So I don't trust it, and I actually know a book club member who got the vaccine, and they're not feeling too great after the second dose. And also remember the earlier clip, Hank Aaron allegedly gets the second shot and dies. That was reported on by a racist suspect. So it's just a huge reason, many reasons to be suspicious of why are they pushing this vaccine. And school vaccination is all very suspicious to me.
Yeah, the interesting thing too is that in other countries like China and whatnot, they're using, regular vaccinations that I personally am not as skeptical of vaccinations in general like other people are. But I understand where the skepticism comes from. But I know that in China, they're using, original vaccination techniques, which is basically giving you a little bit of whatever virus it is so that your body builds immunity towards it. But in America, we have to use this brand new, not highly researched RNA vaccines that have not been used before, which I think is what has really increased my skepticism, because one, I don't understand why they don't just use the types of vaccines that other countries are using, and two, I'm wondering why they're choosing such an expensive way to distribute the vaccines.
Yeah, just to even piggyback off what Erin was saying, I am very skeptical, and you made me realize exactly why I'm so skeptical. This is probably the first vaccine that has, been created during my time. I don't know, I might be wrong. Somebody please correct me if I'm right. And it only took them, COVID's only been out for a year or so, and it took them about a year, maybe like 10 months, 9 to 10 months to create a vaccine. So, of course, like I said, I'm asking a question about this, and I am not at all satisfied with any of the answers. They don't even make any type of sense, and where racist confusion are high, I just be very wary,
Yeah, I didn't add it in this segment, but I did in my scouring the news, I did see a report on so-called countries in Africa that are telling Europe and the United Nations and telling the white nation that, hey, we need vaccines. Why are you guys hogging the vaccines? Some white countries from white nations bought, I believe it was 4 times as many vaccines that they needed. So I'm thinking, why are, first of all, hogging the vaccines? There goes the racist logic. Racist man, racist woman, hogging, stealing all the resources due to their paranoia, due to their greed, and due to their need to control everything. Yurugu, Dr. Marimba, thank you for that piece of text. But yeah, just their need to control everything. I'm like, why are you trying to give the vaccines to other black people over here when there's a ton of black people on the continent that are saying, hey, we need the vaccines. We are the people who need it the most. Why are you hogging it from us? So it's just things to start to connect the dots on. I think it's very suspicious, and also another form of treatment.
Yeah, I wanted to comment on that. I also find it to be very suspicious that this new variant that coming out of South Africa. I don't know if everybody's aware, but Africa's been doing quite brilliantly in the response against the virus. Their cases are lower than most of the world. Their deaths are also lower than most of the world. So it seems strange that a whole new variant would come out of that country. But knowing how racism and white supremacy works, and knowing that this is just my take, but South Africa being the white supremacist central and capital in Africa, that it seems like it can make sense.
Yeah, that reminds me of also ISIS paper chapter 25 of racist man, racist woman, spreading germ warfare in those areas of the world, so-called Ebola, so-called whatever new outbreak that cooks up and spreads over in the continent. Just read that chapter. You have to actually buy the book because it's not in the PDF. But worth to read that chapter and really understand how historically white people, the racist suspects, have used diseases against non-white people on large scale. So just something to think about. Is this a pattern being repeated? Is this the history that will repeat itself that the great scholars talked about, or am I just a confused Negro? I hope
I've also. I wanted to comment. I've also, seen news of certain individuals in Africa. I wouldn't call them leaders, but berating the leadership in the country for allowing them to keep bringing, Europeans into their country. Even though the pandemic is going on, still allowing, people to fly out from, these areas of the world, like the U.S. and Europe, who are being crippled by this disease and this virus, by this pandemic, to come into their countries, still allowing them passage into their countries. So I wanted to add that bit because, like you said, the Europeans and white people basically spreading disease in the way that they do and they have done in the past. Wanted to add some context.
Yeah, and just so we understand it, the system we're dealing with, white people go where they want to go. It's impossible to stop it. Unless white people stop them from doing it, they can go to whatever third world country they want to and spread whatever disease they want. So-called tourists or whatever.
I agree with that, and I would tell everyone to look up, the cholera outbreak in Haiti, because that was something that happened, and when people were coming to Haiti to help them in terms of their AIDS crisis, and ended up infecting like multiple people or like causing a cholera outbreak there. So.
Thanks for the context and insight, everyone. Any of our callers, let's chime in. Caller out in Riverside. Comment, question. Any of the other callers? Before we get started on our next segment, still thinking. Anyone gonna watch any Cicely Tyson movies this coming week, over the weekend, and celebrate?
I have no idea who that woman was, honestly. I was just about to also say that, Quaku. Yeah. But I will be doing my research now, so. Wow.
Alright, I want to start the next segment. Segment 2. The CRWS radio. We're going to be covering the people areas of labor, law, and politics. It's about 15 minutes, so hang in there with us. We're going to decode it right afterwards. Do some code talk. Alright, thanks for tuning in. I'm going to start it up.
Georgia, where a liquid nitrogen leak at a poultry plant has killed at least 6 people. Officials are holding a news conference about the accident.
Some new information tonight out of Williamson County. That's where Franklin police say a hidden camera was found in a bathroom and a changing area at a local cheerleading studio. News 2's Stephanie Langston is live in Cool Springs with what we're learning about an employee possibly linked to this investigation. Steph.
Well, Haley, this is a facility used by kids from all over Middle Tennessee, catering to a wide range of ages, those training for gymnastics, cheer, and dance. That camera found inside the girls' bathroom and changing area inside the facility has parents here concerned that their kid could be a victim.
Shocking, pissed, mad.
Emotions are high from parents at Premier Athletics.
I was just dumbfounded when I heard it.
Parents like John Wolk receiving an email Monday night from Premier Athletics stating an employee is no longer working for the company and that a camera was found in the restroom.
Want me to get my rubber hose out. Take care of business, to be honest with you.
Franklin police saying it was a GoPro camera found hidden in the girls' changing and restroom last Thursday. Police have notified parents of some of the victims, but they're still going through footage with management of the business to identify additional victims. A process they said is tedious and will take time.
Even if it's not my kid, it's still a little kid. No little kid should ever have to go through this.
Police saying it's hard to tell right now how long the camera may have been there. Management with Premier Athletics says they do regular sweeps of the restroom.
I'm just very unfortunate that this happened. You know, it's heartbreaking for the little girls.
Police say they'll be notifying parents of victims as they are identified. Meantime, they are not releasing the identity of that employee until charges have been filed.
On Tuesday, I had got a phone call from my daughter stating that, some girls wanted to jump her. I told her to go and tell the dean because, the dean's at school. Like 2 minutes later, the dean called me to say that he was going to keep her, in student services. He preferred that someone would come and get her and so he investigate what was going on. Not even 20 minutes later, I get a call from the assistant principal to say that EMT want to check my daughter out. And I'm like, for what? Because I just talked to you guys and you said that she was in student services. So, what happened? They didn't give me no details on what happened over the phone. He handed the phone to the lieutenant EMT for him to tell me that, she didn't have any physical injuries to her, that she looked fine. The only part that she remembered is going up to, fight with the girl, the altercation verbally and just being slammed down and woke up inside the office. She don't remember anything else after that.
She has problems with memory now. She has blurry vision. She has headaches. She's having problems sleeping. And you would imagine that if you got slammed like this, where your head is hitting the concrete, that you would have severe issues too with your cognitive functions. The fact that he slammed her to the ground and you hear that thump when her head hits the concrete, And clearly, she's not moving, she's out of it, she's unconscious, and he still puts her in handcuffs. It is outrageous on every level. We are demanding that this officer be terminated and be charged with aggravated assault and battery.
Brian, the Kenosha County District Attorney has declined to press charges against the officer that shot Jacob Blake, saying that the officer followed his training. Why is it so rare for officers to be charged in these incidents?
It's rare because the law supports officers for the most part when it comes to situations like this.
And Brian, a follow-up if I may. Kyle Rittenhouse killed 2 people and wounded another in the protest following Blake's shooting. How common is it for someone to be charged with a double murder to be out free on bond?
Being charged with a double murder is very rare. I mean, if you want to look at like the Ahmaud Arbery case where remand was imposed, meaning that they couldn't pay any amount of bail, that's typically more common for what we see of homicide cases, especially double homicide. The fact that he got bond, I think, is pretty peculiar.
LZ, once again, a study in contrast. When police officers respond to the incident involving Jacob Blake, he was shot 7 times.
See, people who classify themselves as white, they belong to the white genetic survival political party. That is Republicans, Democrats, Libertarians, Greens, and any other group. They understand because their identity is crystallized. I'm white. Now, I'm in the Tea Party. I'm in the Conservative Party. I'm in the Republican Party. I'm in the Democratic Party. I'm in, whatever, independent, whatever. But their identity and their respect for themselves at that level, I'm white. See, I'm not confused. I'm not Euro-American. I'm white.
I know your pain. I know you're hurt. We had an election that was stolen from us. It was a landslide election, and everyone knows it, especially the other side. But you have to go home now. We have to have peace. We have to have law and order. We have to respect our great people in law and order. We don't want anybody hurt. It's a very tough period of time. There's never been a time like this where such a thing happened, where they could take it away from all of us, from me, from you, from our country. This was a fraudulent election, but we can't play into the hands of these people. We have to have peace. So go home. We love you. You're very special. You've seen what happens. You see the way others are treated that are so bad and so evil. I know how you feel. But go home and go home in peace.
You know, Nicole, I was sitting here thinking as I was listening to David and Heidi and thinking about the first hour and the way in which we are kind of representing Donald Trump. Think about someone who has diabetes. That there's already something wrong systemically in the body. And then you introduce a high level of sugar to that body. And what happens? It throws it all off, right? Now, we could blame it on eating that particular item. But there's already something wrong in the body. So what I want us to understand is that Trump isn't the problem. He just simply accelerated it. Intensified it, right? What we're facing in this moment, I believe, are the new redeemers. That was that political coalition in the aftermath of the Civil War who organized in order to seize political power and enforce white supremacy. So we could talk about the conspiracy theorists and the white nationalists. What we have is a Republican Party that is, in fact, the new redeemers. That's who they are. They are defending an idea of America that presumes that people like me, people who hold views that are different than them, do not belong here. And they are willing to kill in the name of it.
The last time Joe Biden was part of the administration in power, the U.S. got involved in 7 new wars. Black Agenda Report contributing editor Danny Haifong has some predictions on how long it will take President Biden to start his own armed conflict.
What I see Biden's administration employing is a shift back to the humanitarian interventionism model of U.S. imperial warfare, which we saw under the Obama administration. And we can already see this with Tony Blinken, the Secretary of State, when he was giving his sort of anointing question and answer session to the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. He was very forthright in agreeing with much of the Trump administration's existing policies, whether it was acknowledging Juan Guaido, the U.S.'s coup and puppet stooge in Venezuela, continuing the sanctions there and putting pressure on Venezuela's government, or there really isn't much, I think, that we're going to see in terms of a shift in U.S. foreign policy, more in the sense that the form will change slightly.
The Trump administration, by some measures, actually reduced the U.S. military presence in Africa. But we haven't heard anything from the incoming Biden administration about an African policy. But then, major news media don't even ask questions about Africa.
Haitians continue to mount street protests demanding the resignation of President Jovenel Moïse, accusing the U.S.-backed politician of massive corruption and brutality. We spoke with Daoud Andre, the Brooklyn, New York-based organizer of the Committee to Mobilize Against Dictatorship in Haiti.
What I can say is that the people of Haiti, outside and inside, continue to struggle this 2021 year. Right now, the current protests in the streets are aimed at forcing Jovenel Moïse out of power by February 7th, 2021. Now, according to Jovenel Moïse and his handlers, his backers, the United States, the core group, they're saying that elections are to happen this year. Him and his cronies, he's coming with a new constitution. And he's given a calendar for a referendum for the Constitution, and later to have elections for both the legislature and the presidency. The reality is, for more than a year now, we can say there is no parliament in the country. Jovenel Moïse has been ruling by decree, and this is supported by the United States and the core group that, of course, he's doing their bidding. The people in the streets are saying that they are not going to elections or in constitutional referendum with Jovenel Moïse. So the call is for his ouster by whatever means necessary.
Okay, you're watching the stream. Today we're catching up on the farmers' protests in India that have been going on for over 2 months now. Hundreds of thousands of protesters, farmers, blocked the main roads around Delhi, and that was after the government introduced new laws, reforms to agriculture in India. The idea was to loosen the policies around agriculture and who farmers could sell their produce to. Now, the Supreme Court in India has suspended the 3 laws that brought the farmers onto the streets of Delhi, but the farmers aren't going home yet. Farmer Parminder Kaur explains why.
We are farmers. If our land is taken away, what will we do? What will we eat? What will I tell my children? That we never went there to protest? We never raised our voice against the government? The land that belonged to our ancestors, we even lost that. They will ask why we didn't fight for our rights. That is why we are here.
They're not taking any chances. After nights of unrest and looting, shop owners in this neighborhood in Amsterdam are nervous.
I had to barricade my shop. Every month already it's been stressful. Can we pay our rent or not? And now this comes on top of it. I've also lost my freedom, but we just have to endure this. If we stick together, we'll be out of this crisis faster.
But for these young men, the curfew and this crisis have become an excuse to take over the city streets, like here in Rotterdam. Outnumbered, police had to witness how shops were looted and destroyed. The same happened in a dozen other towns and cities across the country. The Netherlands has had a more relaxed approach in dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic compared to other countries. On social media, the Rotterdam mayor directly addressed rioters and their parents.
Het is nu bijna 12 uur na het grote geweldsuitbarsting gisteren op Rotterdam-Zuid.
How did you wake up? Did you have a good feeling that you destroyed the city? That you caused damages to the entrepreneurs of your city? Does that satisfy you? And what did you do with the stuff you stole last night?
Questions that many are asking in the Netherlands, like these shop owners in Amsterdam, who are also wondering why in times of crisis some people choose to make the situation even worse. Step fast.
Hi, welcome everyone. Countering Racism, White Supremacy Radio. We just finished our second segment covering labor, law, and politics. Again, for our listeners, press *61 if you would like to comment, ask a question. *61. I was looking in a word guide for the word protest, but I couldn't. It's not in there. But it's non-constructive to protest. It's actually very dangerous. But that's a global trend I'm seeing, is that a bunch of non-white people, victims of racism, white supremacy, protesting. There was even I was even going to add another clip about the protesters in Hong Kong seeking asylum in America because they're now being hunted by so-called Chinese government. And it's just tragic that people put their lives in danger protesting when everyone, that amount of people focus on solving the problem, solving the race problem, replacing white supremacy with justice. Then we wouldn't need anyone to be protesting. We can just solve the problem. It's also interesting to notice what the black people and non-white people are protesting for in India, protesting for in Haiti. Notice what they're protesting for. They're protesting in mistreatment. They're protesting for the right for their food. But over in Rotterdam, Netherlands, they're rioting, looting, protesting because they don't want to be controlled by the COVID lockdown. So white people cannot be controlled. If white people believe that they're being controlled too harshly, they will riot, outburst. They would do what they want, what they want to do is, I believe, to create chaos, which is exactly what looting and rioting is. But the white person, racist person, asked a really important question on the broadcast. He said, "Why do people want to, in a time like this, why do people still want to create chaos and not have peace?" And I suspect because people who practice racism, they don't care about peace. And this is looting, rioting, it's fun to them. But any of the other hosts want to chime in? Again, listeners, *61 if you would like to ask a question, give some insight on what you heard.
Yeah, I would. Very quickly. I definitely would like to. Something that very much caught my eye was the Joe Biden clip of the segment. It is very obvious, that Trump was so bad that nobody can ask any questions as to Biden's term or anything. Nobody asked any serious questions because the only thing that mattered was getting Trump out of office. So now that he's out of office, the reporter brought up a very good point, saying what are Biden's policies regarding Africa. And to be quite frank, I don't even know any of Biden's policies regarding anything. And it's very clear that Biden was part of an administration that started many wars against many non-white countries, many non-white people. So I'm very curious to see what his plans are, for Africa and for more non-white people, because even starting a war after a pandemic and stuff like that, I guess because it's Biden, it is A-okay. Just a lot of I'm baffled right now. I can't believe I didn't even ask myself that question. I can't believe that's never even brought up to my attention. I just think, it's very scary to see because it sounds like Biden's going to get away with a lot of things, and a lot of non-white, confused non-white people are going to give him a lot of passes. So, scary sight to see. Anybody have any thoughts on that, actually?
Yeah, I wanted to add, that whole segment about the whole Biden and his plan was very interesting. I had no idea that was what was going on, but I should have known better. That's always the white supremacist plan. I found it very interesting, some of the language that is being used, right? Words are very powerful. One of the best ways that the white supremacists causes confusion. And how one of the reporters was talking about Trump, and he said that Trump accelerated the problem, using words and descriptions, almost acting as if there never was a problem, or this problem has never been an issue until Trump became president. Racism's been around forever, for as long as anybody can remember, for the better part of 4,000 years. And to say that Trump accelerated the problem how far does that go in actually solving the problem? I don't think it does anybody any good pointing fingers. We know how racist man, racist woman works. As Francis Wilson said in the clip, it's just a white identity. They at the end of the day they identify as white. That's the only thing that matters. White versus non-white. These political parties, these associations, these affiliations, they don't mean anything at the end of the day. The only thing that matters is white or non-white. Do you have color in your skin or do you not? So trying to use Trump as some sort of deflection, so non-white people can go back to the happy days when the white supremacist wasn't walking around with his tattoos openly and freely, where you have to guess about whether this guy could be a suspected racist or not. I guess that's the dream non-white people want to go back to. Somebody told me once that non-white people, black people, the only thing they're interested in is comfort. They're not interested in any kind of justice, which would be balanced between all people. The only thing we're interested in is comfort and being comfortable. I also thought it was interesting how Biden, was moving towards that. How he said he was moving towards that basically starting another war. Preparing to start another war. And it's you paint in one segment you have I'm assuming that guy was non-white because they only ever get non-white people to talk poorly about Trump, or accurately, however you want to say it. I'm not gonna say poorly. In one segment you have somebody attacking Republicans, and then in the next segment you have somebody telling us this is what Democrats are getting ready to do. Once again, that armed conflict, I thought Biden's intentions line up perfectly with what's happening in Haiti, as how there is as what can be seen as a dictatorship going on in that country. And he also mentioned that the U.S. is supporting it. So come on, guys. We can see this playing out in our heads, right? The U.S. supporting this dictatorship, later on changing their stance, then going into that country and wreaking terror and havoc and doing what, racist man or racist woman does best, which is mistreating non-white people.
Wow, you put that really well, Kwaku. Thank you. You're right. Black people, like Biden, is doing a really good job as of just distracting and confusing non-white people into thinking that like things are improving. I don't know. White supremacy is so powerful that apparently a old white person who can easily be found on the internet sniffing children's hair. Maybe that's related to the Peeping Tom clip that was played earlier with the racist suspect employee who they did not name for some reason. Why do they always protect people who do those kind of crimes? Why do they always protect racist suspects who are doing heinous sexual acts against children? Because if anyone's paying attention to the clip with the Peeping Tom, there is a racist suspect who worked at a some kind of cheerleading place, and there was a camera found in the bathroom, and I guess the racist suspect is in custody but hasn't been charged. It's all very confusing how they use their words, but at the end of the day, they protect people like that. And here we have Joe Biden, person who can be found doing something similar. I mean, not something similar, but something also suspicious against children. But for some reason, he's now our president. So the racist logic is very much sick and doesn't care about children, which is why well, I don't have to say it. We're going to hear it in the next segment. Any other hosts want to chime in? Again, any listeners, please press *61 if you would like to participate. Chime in, *61.
Hi everyone, this is Erlin. At first, I wanted to ask 05, is it *61 or *6? Because I've heard that some people are trying to press *61 and it's still not allowing them to speak.
So first you press *6, I believe, and then it's going to tell you to press 1 after that.
Okay.
Is that correct? Because we just did it.
What did you say something for me? Sorry.
CJ just did it. Is that correct, what I just said?
At *6, and then it's going to ask you for 1 or 2. I guess you press 2 because you want to stay in and ask a question.
Okay. So for everyone that's listening, it's *6 to if you would like to be heard. Yeah, I wanted to well, actually, let me let CJ go because I think they've been trying to get in for a while. Did you want to say something, CJ?
Yes. I feel like when it comes to the whole Trump and Biden, Trump just exposed people to be more comfortable under the system of white supremacy. So I start to feel like people, non-white people, feel like maybe everything wasn't quite what it used to be, or they thought another way when it actually wasn't. So now people are starting to open their eyes, and I feel like 2020 is when everybody started to open their eyes because things started to slow down due to COVID. So I feel like when it comes to racism, as much as a lot of us like to stay ignorant, a lot of us acknowledge that
we're still under a system that is controlled under the racist system of white people. And now that we know that and we can acknowledge that if we individually come together, then we wouldn't have so much of a uproar of protest if we knew what job we needed to do and how to do it.
Well said, CJ. Again, for the new callers just joining us, press *6, and then it's going to tell you which button you need to press after that to join the queue. So again, press *6, then it should tell you what button you need to press to join the queue.
Hi, this is Heirloom. Yeah, I thought all of the clips just were so rich, and I really appreciated the Dr. Wilson clip that you played right before that kind of talks about it doesn't matter, Democrat, conservative, Republican, at the end of the day, we're white. And then to have that clip kind of coincide with the clips of like what are happening in other countries under these presidencies, it's not necessarily, maybe the tactics are changing slightly, but it's still controlling their access to resources, controlling, you know, their so-called leaders and things like that. And I agree with, I think 05 was talking about, you know, the Rotterdam protests. What are white people protesting versus like what are non-white people protesting for? And non-white people are protesting literally just for access to live and survive. And non-white people, and white people are like protesting, you know, basically to infringe on other people's well-being, to have because they believe that that is their right, you know. So I think that that is just very, very interesting. I also agree with what Kwaku was saying about Haiti, and we all had a book club meeting about Haiti, and so like a lot of us are pretty familiar with the history of Haiti and just like the backlash that Haiti has received from white countries because they were a country of black slaves that freed themselves. And so I think that whatever, you know, the things that are happening in Haiti now are emblematic of that long-standing, you know, basically feeling of wanting to torture the people there. So I thought that was very interesting, and I liked the clip when the person was like talking about, you know, the policies regarding Africa and how that's not even talked about on the news anyway. And it's so, like, I was looking at a map while I was listening to that, and I see right here that, I mean, this map is from 2019, so it may have changed. It's called America at War, and it says that right now there are like 80 countries that the U.S. is either has bases in, is doing some sort of CIA training, U.S. military exercises, air and drone strikes, right? Like, a lot of those countries are in Africa. Like, at the map I'm looking at, it's pretty much covered in Africa for the most part. And so I think it's really incumbent on us as non-white people to really understand what is happening around the world so that we can build solidarity and like build relationships with people around the world because they are also suffering under white supremacy. Thank you. I'm going to mute my line.
Agreed.
Thank you, this is Quakey speaking. You bring up another point that I wanted to touch on, because every time we go to war, right, where are they most likely going to fight? Last time I checked, I don't remember the last time, you know, maybe World War II was the last time a war was fought in Europe. So every I think they've probably come to some kind of agreement. They most definitely have. Now, in order, what Dr. Francis Cress Welsing teaches us is that white supremacy is all about survival of white genetics. So the white supremacists understand that they cannot go around needlessly killing one another in order for their genes to survive. So every time a war started, just think about the past, I don't know, 50 years, 60 years. Where have those wars been? Where are those wars located? In some non-white country around the world. Something to think about. So every time a war is being, thought about, we're being spoken about, it's safe to assume it's going to be a non-white country. And non-white people are going to suffer and continue to suffer. I want to take it back a little bit and go back to the segment. There was a segment on the officer who shot Jacob Blake coming up. This is another great example of how the white supremacist uses words to confuse us and keep us confused. He said, they asked the question, why is it that officers are never charged? And then, whoever replied saying, the law prevents charges. Now, last time I checked, laws are just written down on paper, they're just words on paper, and somebody has to write them, right? So, according to logic, somebody can write something to change them. So if this was really an issue and a problem that needed to be solved, racism, white supremacy, but specifically the shooting of black males or non-white people, it seems like if this was a true issue and a true priority, somebody could write a new law to change it. But I still don't see that being done. And how do non-white people respond? By going out to protest. That's our response.
Quaku, I think that's a great point, and I also thought that, in that situation, because I think that we as non-white people often have that experience, whether it be like if we have an issue and we're calling someone and they're like, oh, that's just a protocol, I can't do anything about it. I think it's incumbent on us to be like, well, this protocol, or this law is infringing on my rights or my well-being. Therefore, what are the steps that are going to be taken to, adjust or repeal this law to make sure that I am able to exist freely, or as free as I can as a non-white person in this society. And I think that sometimes when people say it's the law, it's like a way or it's just protocol, it's a way to shut down people and to shut them up. And I think that, asking those questions can take it that next step.
Thank you. I want to compare what Quaku said, and also add to it that he mentioned that white supremacy, it needs to be always ready to be ready to go to war against non-white people to prevent white genetic annihilation. And we just learned recently in Urugu how if white people didn't have non-white people, especially black people, to constantly let out their aggression and their destruction and their need for destruction and control, they would destroy each other. But white people have come to the agreement, to the conclusion that, hey, we could just use all of our aggression and destructive energy towards the black and non-white people, and then we will never have to destroy ourselves or each other. That's what's been happening for about a couple thousand years, is that white people, racist suspects, have been channeling all their hate and confusion and aggression and need to control and destroy. Instead of directing that towards each other, they've been directing it towards victims, non-white people. And this is why we have constant war, constant poverty, constant mistreatment on the entire globe, because of this very fact. I could be wrong, but I do believe I'm correct. But callers, listeners, please.
That's true.
Thank you. *6, and then it should tell you what you should press next. Caller in Riverside in Los Angeles. You guys should be able to be heard if you need be. But
all the listeners, it's no need to feel shy, It's a space for all of us to talk as non-white people.
Yeah, we're all still learning. No one's an expert on racism. We're all trying to solve the problem.
On a question, you can answer the question, if protesting is not a good example of, fighting for justice, then what is?
I would say learning code, practicing code, spreading code to the people who need it the most, people who don't have access to it. I think, because it's just think about what happens to people who protest, and think about what happens to people who practice code, and just think about the different results that each of those individuals get. As a person myself who practices code, I think it's a much constructive result than what I see people who practice protesting and trying to get justice that way.
Yes, this is Quakey speaking. That's a good question. Presented with logic, and the evidence shows that protesting in the past hasn't solved the problem. That's just factual. People protested for decades, and racism is still here, and racist women and racist men are still practicing it, and we're still being subject to it. So, what might work? It's evident that we need to try a different approach. We need to do something differently. And like 0526 said, practicing code. I know for me personally, reading books especially has helped me understand racism and eliminate a lot of the confusion I have. And I will independently work toward, solving this problem by producing counter-racist content, counter-racist plans, whatever. I will behave, think, and speak in a manner that will counter racism. That's the code. That's what non-white people can start doing today, rather than protest. And in my opinion, a lot will take them further than protesting would.
Yeah, PurdueJustice.com.
Do you think that, this is Erlen, do you think that we can have a protest if we're all on code? Like, I feel like at some point protesting might be beneficial, not in the terms of just like going to a protest, listening to speeches, etc., but like people gathering in a large group and maybe like occupying a space that a lot of white people who are in power hold, and saying, we won't leave until these demands are met. Do you think that would work, or do you think that just opens them up for more violence?
I think under the system of race and white supremacy, I believe that that's what we've been trained to do. Because from what I've seen, and I think what the record shows, that when people go somewhere and they say they're going to occupy this until this is done, 9 times out of 10, 10 times out of 10 mostly, the white supremacists have ways of making them unoccupy that space. So I don't think that's constructive. I think if massive amounts of non-white people, if ineffective numbers, enough black people were just no more ghetto glorification, no more, hey, I'm not going to actually hate myself, or people who look like me, I'm going to practice deep black self-respect. I'm gonna spend most of my time being constructive. I'm gonna read more. I'm gonna be serious. I'm gonna learn about this race problem. I feel like if more people have done that instead of thinking, gathering in a protest and trying to show a bunch of white people that a bunch of black people can come and sit down in one particular place and time, I believe that is more constructive than trying to occupy space than risking getting torn to shreds by machine guns or police, like artillery or whatever new weapons they're cooking up for non-white people at the face.
Yes, this is Quaku speaking again. I'll give any other host a chance to chime in, but if not, I'll go. I wanted to comment. Oh, okay.
Go ahead.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to add that I believe that once all black people are on code, there won't really need to be there won't be a need to protest anymore, because in my opinion, protesting is the result of begging. When you're on code, you learn how to ask for things, and asking is saying it once. Begging is asking more than twice. So once we're all on code, we won't need to beg, and then therefore we won't need to protest, because we will align our thoughts, speech, and behavior in such a way that would eliminate racism. And like 0526 said, our energies will be put towards more constructive means. Therefore, we wouldn't be ending up in the situations that the white supremacist creates for us in order to experience this mistreatment. I'll mute my line.
This is CJ. I think protesting could be a pro and a con. I feel like it's a con due to, the police officers. I feel like if they do see a group of colored people coming together, what if we was to come together and try to be on code? Just the fear of trying to change the system is what makes them feel like they need to take their aggressions on us. So as much as they're aggressive, on top of that, there's people that do come to protest and they're not for the same cause as others. So even if everybody was trying to be on code, there's gonna always be that one person that can mess it up for the rest of everybody. As an example of, the Black Panther Party from Fred Hampton and William O'Neill messed up the whole system of the Illinois Party due to working with the FBI. So it only takes that a little amount of people to mess up a big thing that's going on.
I wouldn't say that the so-called Black Panthers messed up or anything. I would say that there was a collective white effort of racist stuff. No, the white supremacists came together to take down, destroy the Black Panthers. And what I will also add, what the Black Panthers' fault was is that they practiced for-wallism, which is what we learned about in the code book earlier this week, about which is the kind of activism where people have to go to meetings and gather, and there's typically leaders and positions and whatnot. That's not for-wallism, which is not the best way to go about trying to produce justice, because the white supremacists have ways of shutting that down, infiltrating that those sort of spaces. But yeah, any callers, listeners, Don't try not to be a spectator. If you have been affected by racism, please share, comment, insight on anything we've been discussing. Have you seen this mistreatment? Is it a global system we're living in? Or are we just talking nonsense? Or am I just talking nonsense? Again, *6, and then it should tell you which one to press. I believe it is 1, *6 1, but press *6. Ask a question, comment. Any of our hosts have any comments?
Yeah, I have a comment, or I guess question for the listeners and the host as well. I was wondering, what are your experiences or understandings of, just in general, like the U.S. military, the type of things the U.S. military are doing right now? If you have first-hand experience of like people in your family that are in the military, or people in your family that have been affected by the U.S. military, or people that you know, I guess not family or survival unit or so-called family, or people that you know. I would be interested if anyone has any, because I think we often talk about so-called police brutality, and I think there's also ways that the military is similar.
Yeah, I would say we say that for the when we're talking about for the last segment, which is going to cover military/war. But
that's fine then.
But that's a great question.
The next segment then.
Does any of the hosts want to give any final comments, or should I start the next segment? Get this started. Alright, we're going to start.
I have a question. Hi, this is Timmy. I guess my question is, for people who are more, who wish to be more pragmatic about, defeating white supremacy, right? What sort of actions would you say on a macro scale would you advise people to do? Because I've heard a lot of things that have to do with a lot about the individual, but I haven't heard. But I got into it here late, so I don't know if you guys discussed this already. But I heard a lot of things having to do with doing things as an individual, but not necessarily as a community. And so I was just wondering what sort of advice, because some people, their life's work is Black liberation. So, we've been taught this idea of doing protests and all of these things, which, I don't disagree with anybody's sentiment on that, but I'm just wondering what sort of actions pragmatic actions you would take on a macro level.
Can you explain what you mean by pragmatic and by a macro level? Macro, I'm assuming you mean by on a big scale, I'm assuming?
So organizing, right? Because I understand the whole protests aren't the way to go and things of that nature. But to a certain extent, there has to be some sort of organization going on, whether it be a mass, a movement to live in specific areas and start to develop specific areas that have been untouched by white people and or at least white business owners and things like that. Or it could be, creating more Black boarding schools, something of a pragmatic action. Educating yourself is an action, but that is more on an individual level and not on a group level. Like it's not actions that you can really organize. You can't force another person to read, or you can't really necessarily like you can like recommend some books, but you know what I'm saying? It's kind of things that you more so have control over yourself as an individual. Whereas there can be other things that you do that can that brings people together and forces you to build community. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, I understand. I would suggest that any person serious about black liberation must understand that the system of racism, white supremacy, is a code. It's an entire racist code that is targeting currently every single black person on planet Earth. There's no way to escape it if you're non-white. So there's no place a black person, non-white person can go. This is why there's no such thing as a black community, because in order for one to have a community, you must be able to protect your community, you must be able to sustain your community. So this is why all black people, all non-white people are victims. So the best thing one to do is start to practice counter-racist code 24/7. You could do that by thinking about replacing racism with justice, and by reading the code books, and you can find that producejustice.com. And just if one is truly looking for liberation, I believe that can be found in the form of replacing the system with justice, because that should be the best course of action. But if a person is dedicated to black liberation, they should be comfortable in saying and calling what's happening on planet Earth currently what it is, which is racism and white supremacy being practiced by the usual suspects, the powers that be, racist man, racist woman, and these people are white. Does that make sense? Hello?
Well, this is Erlem. I wanted to ask, I think that's a good question, or an interesting question, because I personally think that as someone who has done a lot of organizing work, I think that it's not really going to be super beneficial unless people are on some sort of code and really codified. So I would say if people are codified, then yeah, I don't know if really doing macro type work is even feasible right now in the state of in terms of how poorly educated non-white people are in terms of their history, and the type of organizing work that would be required would need non-white people to really, I don't know, just be on a type of code that would make it easier to get work done and more organized. But I would say if you do the work in terms of you do the readings and you find a code for yourself that is producing justice, I think that it would probably be really beneficial to find other counter-racists in your area, your collective, and have a goal. Hey, I want to make sure that everyone in this collective is not housing insecure. How can we do that? Or I want to make sure that this person in my neighborhood has a place to live. How can I do that? I want to make sure that every kid in my neighborhood has food to eat this week. How can I do that? How can I build a food pantry for these people? Things like that are much more beneficial than trying to aim for macro. I don't want to go into if you look at a lot of groups right now, ADOS, things like that, those groups are splintering and also falling apart because the national always has issues with the local, and it's because the local is actually doing the day-to-day work, and the larger group is really in terms of just trying to get money and funding. And money and funding is always an issue. So that's what I would say. Focus on your whatever counter-racist collective you have to fix an immediate goal in your area, and make sure that you get that information out there so that other collectives and other areas can do that type of work too.
This is Quaky speaking. I wanted to add. So I believe it could be important to organize and get people moving on a national scale to end this problem, because we need everybody on board, all non-white people on board to end this problem of racism and white supremacy. But I also believe that can't be done unless there's some work done independently and on your own. The book by Neely Fuller is titled. This is the code book that we all refer to. The book is titled "The United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept." So I want to, bring your attention to two words: united and independent. So I understand this to be united under, solving the problem of racism and white supremacy, and working independently to solve it. When you're working on solving the problem, we can come together and move towards solving that problem together. The issue with organizations and protests is that there's still a lot of confusion surrounding white supremacy. A lot of people don't even have the same definition of white supremacy. So as long as there's still confusion, as long as we don't have the same definition of white supremacy, how are we going to be able to, work to solving this problem? So in order for, I think, that work to be done on a macro scale, non-white people, black people, all need to definitely work on themselves independently, because there's been numerous movements, numerous leaders who have come out, Fred Hampton, Malcolm X, Khalid Muhammad, etc., who have come out and tried to lead us, out of this problem, lead us to a solution. And white supremacy has shown us time and time again that they will take our leaders from us, and they will take, anytime we try to organize, they will take that leader. They would take that leader from us. So, what should, according to logic, what should we as non-white people be doing? By educating ourselves and moving independently. Get rid of leaders. When we don't have leaders, and everybody works towards solving this problem together, you educate yourself. Therefore, you don't need a leader. You're your own leader. You're your own follower. Just some of the tactics, that prevent, organizing from happening with the white supremacy.
Well said, Craig. I believe removing leaders will allow people to think for themselves, which is a huge problem on planet Earth. People do not think for themselves. They're brainwashed from birth to have racist logic, which is basically a white person in your mind egging you on to hate black people and to hate yourself.
And you're also only as strong as the weakest person in whatever organization. So if you have a lot of people who are there that are not codified, that's your organization. It's not codified. Because even just one person.
Yeah, one final thing I'd like to say. The code says to do not associate oneself with any group or organization that is not dedicated to replacing the system of racism and white supremacy with justice. And I do believe if a group is totally dedicated to doing that, they would not be in fact doing much for wallism unless for a very, very short amount of time and very, very intentionally. Did Quaku Drummer want to chime in? I believe I may have heard him earlier.
He's having some technical difficulties logging back in. If you see him, maybe shout him out, tell him how to get back on.
Yeah, I'm having technical difficulties.
Oh. No, you're on.
Oh, yes. Hi, 05. I got booted for a minute here, so I was just trying to catch up with what you guys were saying. But unfortunately, I was unable to catch up to what you guys were saying. I don't know if we start the next segment or not either.
No, we haven't started the next segment. We're going to be starting that up. Any of our other callers want to ask a question? Thanks for chiming in. Listen, it's always nice to hear a victim of racism using their time constructively to possibly learn about the problem. And the host want to chime in, or can we get into the next segment?
The last thing I have to say, this is CJ. If you want to lead individually, it's best to lead individually, because if you have a leader, white people know who to target. But if you lead individually and come together, they won't know who to target.
Yeah, lead by example. Develop your counter-racist code in your thought, speech, and behavior. Spread that to other black people, and the problem will be solved. I'm going to get into the final segment. It's about 15 minutes, everyone. And we're going to be covering the people areas of religion, sex, and war. I do not know if I don't think there's any religion clips in this one, but we'll just talk about some things that we may have saw and didn't add to the broadcast. Without further ado, CWRS Radio, from falsehood to truth, we will solve the problem.
Have to be able to make war. And it's time for people to talk about it. You know, we need to have talk-ins. During the Vietnam War, they used to have teach-ins. And we need to have talk-ins about racism, white supremacy as a global system for white genetic survival on the planet and preventing white genetic annihilation by any means necessary. It is this logic that controls activity in economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war.
Defiance on the streets. Polish women ignoring lockdown rules for the second night in a row to protest a court ruling to make all abortions illegal, except in the case of rape, incest, or a threat to the mother's life. It is another chapter in what critics call a disturbing slide towards authoritarianism in Poland. The governing Law and Justice Party asking a court made up mainly of its own appointees to review the issue. Monika Platek is a University of Warsaw law professor.
It is a test. If you can take away the human rights from women, why can't you take the rest of those human rights from the rest of the society?
The abortion laws were already strict, mainly allowed only on the grounds of severe fetal defects.
Then white would disappear. And this is what the discussion that is going on in Europe, all across Europe. Because dark-skinned people are moving from North Africa up into Europe. And the fears in Europe are the same as the fears on the part of white people in this area of the world. If all of these people of color are coming up into Europe, first of all, the white people are not reproducing themselves. Their fertility level is low. And they also need people to man the jobs. But if these non-white people are going to move in and the white women are attracted to the darker-skinned men, then the color of the people in Europe is going to change.
Al Jazeera News. Demographic crisis. Poland population shrinking under pandemic. As deaths spike at rates not seen since World War II, birth rates are declining. Statistics for 2020 show deaths spiked in Poland to a level unseen since World War II, and births sharply declined. Trends attributed to the COVID-19 pandemic and described by some as demographic crisis. The data reported on Tuesday by the daily newspaper came from a state register that includes weekly births and deaths. Poland, a nation with a population of more than 38 million, registered 357,400 births last year, the lowest number since 2005, and some 486,200 deaths from various causes, the highest number registered since the war. The overall data showed a population loss of some 129,000 people, compared with a decline of some 36,400 the year before. Poland's population has slowly decreased in the past 20 years, mostly due to the immigration of young people seeking better opportunities.
What do I mean by first time, last time? First time he hits you, that's the last time. Because I don't mean you come back at him and hit him and all like that. That's an announcement. You accept that announcement seriously. That should be a part of the black code as of this minute, worldwide.
Seahawks player Chad Wheeler allegedly beats, chokes girlfriend until she loses consciousness after demanding she bow to him. NFL player Chad Wheeler is out on bail after allegations that he brutally assaulted his girlfriend, who reportedly said she was being killed when she called for help. As the New York Times reports, Wheeler was arrested last Friday night or early Saturday morning at a residence in Kent, Washington, after his girlfriend contacted relatives and 911 saying that Wheeler had attacked and choked her so severely that she lost consciousness. According to charging documents obtained by the Seattle Times, Wheeler's girlfriend told police that he was in a quote-unquote dark place on Friday night, having earlier shaved his head, and that he told her to bow to him. When she questioned the demand, he allegedly grabbed her by the neck and threw her on the bed, choking her until she lost consciousness. She regained consciousness and tried to get away, but Wheeler allegedly grabbed her by the arm and strangled her again. The woman again lost consciousness, and investigators reportedly suspect Wheeler may have punched her in the face while she was unconscious, according to the report. Reports in the New York Times and the Seattle Times indicate that the woman was able to escape to a bathroom when she regained consciousness again. She then texted friends and relatives, including Wheeler's family, asking them to call 911, possibly because she was afraid of Wheeler overhearing her. The New York Times report states that the woman did eventually call 911, saying that,
"What's wrong with variety? What's wrong with diversity? Diverting from one thing to another." Well, maybe nothing, but let's examine it. Examine it for what? To see if it is an improvement over what you already had. And if so, justified by showing, by example, where's the improvement? Which one of these? See, when you start talking about homosexuality or lesbianism, these are not just abstract words. These are talking about you have to do certain things to qualify. So what are these things that you do? And which one of them is an improvement over what has been done? That's just like a person might come around and say, well, hey, I used to kind of be attracted to people, I've had several wives and all like that. Even had a little incest, every now and then, but I finally came to the conclusion that people ain't where it's at all. I'm in the bear. You say, what do you mean you in the bear? I'm into bear.
Orangutan was shaved, made to wear jewelry, and used as a prostitute. An orangutan was trained to perform sex acts and forced into prostitution in Indonesia. Workers at a nearby palm oil farm in Borneo would come to the village's brothel where Pony would be lying on a dirty mattress, chained to the wall. The defenseless animal, who was shaved and made to wear jewelry and perfume, would then be raped by men twice the size of her, who had paid for the experience. Pony was stolen from her mother as a baby and taught how to perform sex acts by her captors, from as young as 6 years old. Her body was then shaved every other day, leaving her with sores, skin irritation, and prone to mosquito bite.
See, now you might laugh, but it's going to come to that, if it ain't already. Because there are some people into that. In the code book, I describe us as the pitiful people. That is the term that best describes us. All of us are pitiful, meaning worthy of pity. And should ask for it from the people who are not in a pitiful position, and that would be the white supremacists. And don't be ashamed to do it, because that's where we are. We have invisible chains, but they are there. We're just like we were when we were on the slave ship, collectively. And that's from here to Nigeria, to the Congo, to Morocco, to Brazil, to wherever you find black people. You find people who are worthy of pity.
How I've seen violence impact civilians in this country, like there are kidnappings every night. When it's dark and you go to sleep, there is no guarantee like you're gonna wake up tomorrow, because you might be kidnapped during the night, and also like you can't trust anyone in this country. Your friends might be a rebel, so like this country is totally a mess.
That was Novice Ngondo talking to the stream earlier about life in Central African Republic. Fighting over election results has resulted in tens of thousands of civilians fleeing Central African Republic.
These are the only survivors of an airstrike which killed most of the Majali family. The attack pretty much leveled their home, but the accounts of what happened by the sole survivors and the many witnesses we interviewed have made the Saudi coalition's position unsustainable. After months of delay, the coalition has admitted they made a mistake. They bombed the wrong house. These inhospitable mountains were where the Majali family lived, now thrust into the front line of a civil war that's tearing their country apart. We've put together the most detailed account yet about the massacre that happened here. It's an attack which has now led to a rare admission by the Saudi-led coalition that they were responsible for wrongly killing 9 innocent civilians.
After 10 years of civil war, Syria's economy is in tatters. In 2011, the currency traded at 47 liras to the dollar. Now it's at more than 1,200. The UN says food prices tripled last year and estimates 4 in 5 Syrians now live below the poverty line. This winter, there has been a shortage of fuel and wheat.
We come here every morning scrapping through leftovers and plastics to bring back home and sell to make a living. Sometimes we find food and eat it, even give it to our children at home if there's enough of it. Idlib is home to about 3 million Syrians displaced by the war, about half are children. Many here abandoned their assets, used their savings to flee, and are now desperate for work. They have little buffer for an economic downturn, so there is a growing reliance on child labor.
We search for plastic, iron, and copper. We go to every car that comes and then collect and sell what we can, so I can have enough money for my family and return home.
More than 30 refugee camps surround Idlib's landfill sites,
Those who scavenge here contract skin and lung diseases. They've caught hepatitis. 3 weeks ago, 3 children died after a landfill collapsed on them.
We are poor and don't have anything to eat. We struggle day and night working with injured hands, breathing fumes from smoke and the waste. It's a lot of suffering, only to earn $4, which is not enough to cover the basics, like medicine for us or our children.
The World Food Programme estimates more than 9 million Syrians suffer from food insecurity. That's half the country and the highest on record. The worst of the war may be over, but the fight for survival goes on.
So help me God.
Congratulations, Mr. President.
Minutes after Joe Biden was sworn in as US President last week, Israel's Prime Minister released a congratulatory video referencing a warm personal friendship and also his government's immediate priority for the new administration.
And to confront common challenges, chief among them, the threat posed by Iran.
On Tuesday, Israel's top general turned up the volume, saying he was preparing new attack plans targeting Iran.
I have instructed the IDF to prepare several operational plans in addition to existing ones, which we will develop throughout the coming year. The power to initiate them lies with the political echelon. However, the offensive options need to be prepared, ready, and on the table.
The general warned the new US administration that returning to the Iran nuclear deal, from which Donald Trump withdrew in 2018, would be a mistake that would allow Iran to develop a nuclear weapon.
Disunited nations.
Countering racism, white supremacy radio. Again, callers press *61 if you would like to join in the talking about the race problem. A lot to digest from this segment. Any other hosts want to give their take on some of the stuff we just heard?
Hi, this is Quakey. Can I be heard?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that was a lot to digest. This was the segment on sex and war. It was very clear that that there are a lot of atrocities going on around the world, but this is the current state of the world, and there's a lot of confusion surrounding this particular topic. People quite oftentimes wonder and always think like, why can't the leaders just get it together in that country? Why is this going on? Why is this not stopping? And I've come to understand this as this is the system of racism and white supremacy at work. This is what it was built to do, and this is what it will continue to do, which is mistreat non-white people. When you think about some of those countries and how poor they are, some of them, a lot of them are starving, don't have, one lady said she doesn't have medicine. Where can they acquire such weapons of mass destruction? Where can they acquire such weapons to, bomb, to, commit airstrikes on a mountain? I mean, I've come to understand that the white supremacist is the one that supplies these weapons. So if this was an actual problem, why is it not being solved? Because this is exactly what the system is built to do. That this terror, this war, non-white people dying, this is exactly what is supposed to be happening in the system of racism and white supremacy. Non-white people being bombed and mistreated. all over the planet. Let me mute my line.
Yeah, I definitely second the board, hand in hand with the system of racism, and I believe that no problem in the world will be solved until system of racism is replaced with a system of justice, because there's some kind of thing where if people get sick from drinking at the well, you have to cleanse the source of the sickness, you know. And I believe the source is the system. The system is poisoning everyone, so that needs to be replaced, because that's the root of the poison. It's poison. It's the system. The root is poisoning everyone, and this is why we're reporting on so-called Indonesians, so-called non-white people in Indonesia raping animals. And I believe this behavior was given to them by the usual suspects, because they degrade sex and they thrive off that sort of behavior. It is just things to expect in the racist system. We should expect this sort of behavior. I was doing more research on Area 8 sex, and I discovered in the area of the world known as Pakistan has a huge pedophile problem with non-white young males being molested and raped, and it's so prominent and such a problem over there. And it's nothing. This problem will not be solved. That raping problem, that child sex trafficking problem will not be solved until the system is replaced with justice, because the system thrives off this sort of behavior. I need my line.
Hi, this is Erin. Yeah, those segments were really a lot, especially, what was it? It was 50% of Syria's population is food insecure or going through some sort of poverty. That is half the population. What? This is on top of the fact that probably, I want to strive for accuracy, but I would say thousands of Syrians have fled the country since 2011 or so, 2000, maybe a little bit later than that. Sorry. So it's just it's just shocking to me, because before the so-called Arab Spring that caused a lot of instability and was partly funded by the American government, these places were pretty, at least bare minimum, able to feed the population. This is the same thing that happened in Iraq before the Iraq War. Iraq was actually a country that had a pretty decent, or I would say very well, infrastructure in terms of access to water, food, electrical grid. It is now, if you look at pictures of, a city called Fallujah in Iraq, that city is now completely decimated. On top of the fact that these are a lot of places that have a lot of historical artifacts too. It's just so astonishing to me that, these are countries that before America, white supremacy got there, they've always been there, but before they invaded, the military invaded, these places were able to provide access to the citizens. And now, what are we fed? We're fed the same type of trauma porn, the same type of, these people are suffering. And they're suffering because of white supremacy. They're suffering because of this, the military that has gone in there and caused this type of destruction. And if that's not proof that white supremacy needs to end and be replaced with justice, I don't know what is, because I cannot. And to add on to this, I read a report that the people in that Idlib province in Syria, there were women and children freezing to death. I think earlier last year, like literally freezing to death. You know, that in a world where people have access to homes that have so much, you know, I'm sure that a lot of the people that exist in Syria that are being racially showcased and used by the American and Russian governments do not have to worry about having heating in their homes. And that is very unfortunate. I don't think we should live in a society where anyone is freezing to death. I mute my line.
I agree. Unfortunately, that is to be expected and will continue as long as the system of white supremacy is in place, and as long as the non-white people on planet Earth do not have the will and know how to solve the problem, unfortunately. But I believe this is a good step. Area 9 is also on war, counter war, and programs like this, attempts like this is a good effort, I believe, and attempting to solve the problem, counter the problem. I'm trying to bring some truth here. And I really want to mention the fear aspect of racial white supremacy and the preparedness and the danger of the system, because with this Iran nuclear situation, just the thought of these so-called Iranian people who maybe they're so fearful of because they have black lineage, non-white lineage, and they may be classified as non-white. But they're afraid of these people getting a so-called nuclear weapon, and it's because they, in a system of white supremacy, the white supremacist mindset, a non-white country or non-white people having a so-called nuclear weapon may put them in an equal position or give them the potential to annihilate white people if white people are actually down to the nuclear war, which I believe they are very much willing to do a nuclear war. Unfortunately, history and Michael Bradley has shown and stated that repeatedly. That's my take on the nuclear thing. What else was something to mention? Yeah, and they're just really open with their needing to protect the system, defend the system. Any other folks want to chime in?
This is Quaking speaking. I like to bring up an analogy often at Newportism on this show, because I feel like it fits the narrative perfectly at the way that the world is being ran. You know, when you think about those places and the non-white people, they're suffering, and it's being broadcasted all over the world. People are very aware of what's going on in these countries, but yet still nothing seems to be done, and these places in the world continue to see suffering. They continue to experience suffering, trauma, tragedy, etc. And the way that I look at the world, I understand that the way the world works is that when you look at the world, the people with all the resources are in one spot, in one place on the planet, right? All of them would classify as white, and the people who who are the majority of the planet are non-white, which are the majority of the people experiencing these trauma and tragedies. So why is it that the people with the resources and the means of ending this don't end it? I would say that if the U.S. military, if they were serious about ending this problem, they could definitely have the means and the resources to prevent these armed conflicts from happening. But why is it that when they get involved, it gets worse, oftentimes, or the problem doesn't get solved? That's because of the system of racism and white supremacy. That it's necessary for non-white people to go on and continue to suffer and experience tragedy and death.
Yeah, like what's going on in Central Africa is really terrifying. It's really terroristic, and it's really evident that there's like no pause, there's no like break in the racist suspects and white supremacists practicing racism. There's no break in the destruction that they spread in these non-white areas of the world. And yeah, it's just really tragic, but I know this problem can be solved, and I do wish the majority of peoples of the world who have been classified as non-white began to get serious and really began to talk about this problem, study the problem, learn about the problem. And actually, to bring up the bestiality clip, I actually have an experience with my first experience with bestiality. I was still a child, and I was introduced to this sort of pornography by two white men. And that's all I'll say on the subject. But I didn't know anything about racism back then, so I didn't think much of it. It was just two white guys showing me something interesting, I suppose. But now I know. Now that I understand the system, I'm very much aware that no, this is just the racist logic that you do manifest, and this is just the racist suspects' behavior. This is what stuff they do, and the stuff they train non-white people to do.
Yeah, I would also add that, when it comes to like what we were talking about in Syria, it's just very interesting to think about the amount of like confusion is caused because the government is constantly telling us that it doesn't have money, and yet it has this huge military that is killing multiple people, producing drone strikes and all of these huge expansive weaponry, and they're also, like I said before, in 80 different countries around the world, and yet they say that they don't even have enough money to give us $2,000 checks. I just think it's very interesting, and I think that people are somehow confused because they're constantly saying also the government doesn't have enough money. I would recommend everyone look at, the stimulus that just passed. They had that bill. The bills are all available for everyone to see. And I read that bill, and a lot of the money goes to programs around the world that are further indoctrinating people into white supremacy. And very few of that money goes to even like producing habitable living standards for the people in America.
Not surprising. Yes, sir.
I just wanted to comment. I wanted to make very clear that, the people in the world that actually have real and true power, this doesn't even equate to money, so to say, are white supremacists. And they also have the ability to end any kind of injustice in the world. But it's very obvious that they choose not to. Am I correct?
Definitely. They could put all the money in no problem.
Right, because if I'm a person, a non-white person that has 80 million dollars, right? Some people might equate that to power. But the reality is that I can be stripped of that whenever the white supremacists decide to do that. And that is the reality, that is the truth. So, do non-white people have any power to actually change the situation that's happening to them? Possibly. Rather than, once the confusion subsides. So yeah, very interesting. I'm gonna mute my line.
Yeah, there's actually a word that I was looking at a word that I really like this word because it's a good question to ask. Hey, can we actually solve this problem? Like that, or are we in over our head trying to solve the race problem? Are we just too silly and too primitive and too stupid as the white supremacists will like us to believe we are, and compared to them, we may actually be. But in the word guide, this is a word called zeroism. Let me find it really quickly and read it. Alrighty, so, and this is gonna come up a lot. This kind of what this word means. It's gonna come up a lot in the struggle, the mission to solve the problem, to replace white supremacy with justice. So this is from the word guide, and it's on page 434. And the code says zeroism or zeroistic behavior, racial. Use these terms to apply to things said or done or not said or done that directly or indirectly have the effect of not helping to promote the replacement of the system of white supremacy racism with a system of justice and correctness, balance between all people, all creatures, all things, etc., in all areas of activity, existence, and non-existence. So, this is something, if a warrior, kind of racist warrior, a typical kind of racist is on this struggle journey to solve the problem, they just can't afford to ponder on whether, if the problem can be solved, is whether about when the problem will be solved. And I believe it will be solved when in affected numbers, enough non-white people are on code, are really serious about solving the problem, until the white supremacists say, hey, you can't really have fun anymore mistreating these non-whites anymore. So let's try this justice thing. Or let's just kill all of them and deal with ourselves later. But I believe they'll choose to produce justice. But we need to, everyone get on code. Every single black person, non-white person on the planet needs to be on code. And that is unfortunately, I believe, the only way that we're going to solve this problem. The world has a racist code to target us, mistreat us. Therefore, we need our own code to counter the racists, so we could produce justice. So no more insanity, no more chaos, no more mistreatment on planet Earth. It's not pretty simple what we want, but getting there shouldn't take long once enough black people get on code.
You also have to have self-respect and respect for others. You got to teach your youth self-respect as well.
Yep, agreed. And self-respect, there's no name calling, just wait to start. Some black self-respect, no name calling, no cursing, no snitching, no bragging, no showing off.
No gossiping.
Yeah. Just end, I also, let me read another word that should be put in the airwaves from their word guide of things to help solve the problem. So I really like this word because growing up in the area of the world known as South Central, you see a lot of this 24/7. And the word is called ghetto glorification. And Neely Fuller Jr. says, use this term to apply to any behavior by one or more non-white person that helps to produce, promote, and or praise speech or action that is primitive, savage, silly, stupid, and or in other ways destructive that directly or indirectly support white supremacy racism. Example, non-white person speaking and or acting in support of one or more of the following: being discourteous, fighting for purposes other than self-defense, necessary defense of others and or necessary defense of major constructive possessions, property, killing for purposes other than self-defense, necessary defense of others, necessary defense of major constructive possessions, property, and or the enactment of maximum emergency competitive action, name calling, promoting the destructive use of sound, producing noise, robbing and stealing, showing contempt for non-white females, showing off the ability to belittle non-white people based on what they have or have not acquired because of what the white supremacists, racists have allowed them to acquire, showing off the ability to belittle non-white people because non-white people are not white people, planning newer styles of doing harm to non-white people, singing songs and or using slang terms that glorify non-white people, doing harm to other non-white people. So this is ghetto glorification. This is just a great list of things to avoid to help solve the problem. What if you're not doing any of these things 24/7? You're helping to solve the problem. Does that make sense, everyone?
Yeah, this is Quaker speaking. For me, ghetto glorification is, in my opinion, one of the things that black people stop today. A lot of problems can be solved. Not racism necessarily, but a lot of their individual problems that they have. I know that, I've had to stop listening to a lot of music. I've had to stop watching a lot of television because of the ghetto glorification in it. I don't understand how people think that, speaking about making music about the ghetto, making movies about the ghetto, just speaking about the life, bringing it to light, and can be constructive for black people to consume. If I hear, smoke weed, drink gin and juice, fuck bitches, get money all day, and you're talking about black people, this is a black person, this is what a black person aspires to do. How is that constructive? Or how does that, paint a positive picture for black people? How am I not being programmed if that's what I'm listening to all day? The white supremacists are great at using ghetto glorification to confuse non-white people, black people especially. So this is something that needs to stop immediately. If there's one thing that anybody learns from this, and if there's anything you can do, it's stop that. Stop ghetto glorification. Because none of our problems can be solved as long as we continue to glorify the ghetto. And that's what I have to say.
Agree, Clay, too. 100% agree. If that was solved, a large majority of non-white people's problem would vanish overnight. Any other hosts like to chime in? Callers, please. Star 61 if you would like to participate. Give everyone a moment to think. We'll be wrapping up shortly, I believe. New caller, please star 61 if you would like to participate. Yeah, it's really all across the world. I got from the broadcast is that there's going to be massive suffering, and that is in the form of the women. What's going on over there in Yemen with the airstrike killing 9 people? That's what's going on in Syria with another thing to take note from Syria is and also Central Africa is like the thousands of people being displaced, and we learned from the code that dislocation, white supremacy must displaced non-white people to keep them in a state of confusion and in a state of always on the move. And we also learned in the destruction of black civilization is that's what kept a lot of non-white people, especially black people, particularly black people, from being able to build and protect themselves in a constructive manner. So white supremacy has been doing this for a very long time, displacing non-white people and taking their stuff. Anyone like to chime in? Callers, guests, your lines are open.
This is Quakey once again. Wanted to add on to that last part about the dislocation. In the book...
Can you speak up? It's hard to hear you.
In the book that we've been reading, the book club called The Destruction of Black Civilization, one thing we learned as to how those great civilizations were built was that, black people had time to think. That when you're not under the pressures of racism and white supremacy, for instance, or the constant stress of having to move, flee slavery, etc., you have time to think and produce. Right now, black people have no time to think. And whatever constructive time that they do have, that they can use towards thinking, they use it for other destructive means, other destructive things. So, interesting is what the white supremacist is afraid of black people having the time to think.
Yeah, and the system of white supremacy, black people should not be allowed to think, I believe. Anonymous caller, did you have a question, comment?
Yes. I agree with what the hosts have been saying. I think places like the Middle East, quote unquote, North Africa, all these places are white supremacist playgrounds where they generate terror and generate violence to test their weapons on non-white people, to test their military force on non-white people, and to test their ability to dominate foreign lands. And I don't think any war is for peace. I think all wars for exploitation and land grabs. I think European countries and the USA is really good at exploiting, invading, and killing people in foreign lands, and then having the media portray it as freedom, liberty, and war for peace.
Oh, well said. I believe that is Mr.
I wanted to also say, sorry. Oh, this is Heirloom. Something that I thought about too, because we were talking about the readings and destruction of Black civilization. They talk about how, you know, the Arab people were complicit in, or actually were one of the main causes of the splintering and the, you know, causing these Black civilizations to lose power, lose their land and resources. And it was work that they did for a long time. And it's also being done now. And, you know, the Arab people were once maybe accepted into whiteness, but you can see right now how they're being treated, even when they come to white countries. They are no longer being accepted into whiteness in the same degree that they have been in the past. And it shows you how easily, you know, white supremacy can pick you when they want to and then throw you away and cause suffering to you when they don't want you. And so I think it's important for non-Black people that are also non-white to be really mindful of the alliances you make with white people, because they're going to throw you away when you're not necessary for them.
Well said, Ellen. Like, totally agree. That is the pattern. You're only useful in a system of white supremacy as long as you can help to maintain and refine it. And yeah, and it's so tragic because it seems to be more people want to be made comfortable by white supremacy to ascend to white supremacist behavior than to counter and solve the problem, which could be fear, or it could be that the comfort of white supremacy are just that insatiable. I mean, just that appeasing, or looks that it just that greatly desired due to the brain trashing, brainwashing of people.
I'd like to comment also that, piggybacking off of what Heirloom was saying, you know, I think one thing that I realized is that I've definitely reevaluated my life goals. And I think that's something that everybody should in this conference should think about. Because when I was a confused slave, you know, my goals could definitely be defined as attaining whiteness, you know, getting rich and, you know, being able to provide for myself and my family. But what does that do to counter racism? That's the question. You know, if there's one thing you ask yourself too, when you leave here, ask yourself that. What do my goals do to counter racism, to solve the problem? I've been asking myself. I still don't have the answer yet. I don't know if I do. Let me mute my line.
Yeah, it's nice to hear a Black male who can be honest with the truth and understand that they want, like I believe all of us ascended for what the white supremacists trained us to want. But Craig said something really interesting and really important about Black people being able to think. And I hope this broadcast is something that will allow Black people to think and non-white people to think, and help to come up with ways to solve the problem and stop the trend of being spectators and be participators and talking about the race problem. Dr. Francis Cresswell says that we need to do things like this. You know, if 24/7 across the globe there was non-white people talking about racism and white supremacy, talking about their victimization and their mistreatment. White people wouldn't like that. They wouldn't like that at all, to the point where they may have to produce justice. But we won't know until we try it. Attempt it. We must do it. Any other hosts want to chime in?
Yeah. Hi, fellow counter-racists. It's Mize here. I just wanted to ask, do you believe that we've been discussing the destruction of black civilization, and from what we see is a lot of land reclaiming has happened. Do you believe that us as a black people, we need to reclaim our ancestral lands and spaces, or at least establish some form of residency there? Or do you think it's just enough to regain the knowledge that we've lost and reestablish it anywhere that we are settled?
Hello, this is Kwaku. Thank you, Mize. That was a great question. In my opinion, we need to do all of it. We can claim our lands, and we need to claim the knowledge. I think we can only reclaim our lands once we reclaim the knowledge that we've lost, that has been taken from us, that has been stripped from us. Once we've done that, we will know how to go about this problem and identify the enemy. We will be able to go back and take our lands and rightfully our birthright. Honestly, what we see now is that the white supremacists have control of our lands, and we can all see what's going on there. Rape and pillage of the land, the rape and pillage of the people. So it's safe to say that the white supremacists have no respect for our land, for our bodies, etc. So we most definitely need to regain the knowledge that we have in order to respect ourselves, and respect ourselves enough to go and reclaim our land. I'm going to mute my line.
Yeah, I think for me to answer that question, I'm just going to refer to the code and just see the logic from the code, which the code states came with the universe. I don't know if black people have the power to physically reclaim anything, but I do believe if black people were able to understand the problem of racism and understand how, through the text of the destruction of black civilization, the ISIS papers, and the code book, if they were able to study this knowledge and apply this knowledge, that they would be able to come up with ways to get their land back, get some sort of justice. But under the system of racism, black people don't have the power to reclaim anything, because in order to do that, I believe you need power. You believe you need some kind of military to go back and so-called reclaim something. But black people can study the problem and understand that, hey, we need justice on planet Earth because this is not okay, and then force the white supremacist hands that way without bloodshed or trying to reclaim land through physical violence, which the track record shows doesn't work against the white supremacists. Anyone else want to answer the question?
I just wanted to comment that I think that's a really important and interesting question, but I don't feel qualified to answer it. But it's something that I think about a lot too, about reclaiming land.
Okay,
Sorry. 0526. I just want to comment. I wanted to say that I definitely agree with you. As of right now, non-white people, especially black people, have no power to do so. And even if we so-called had that power, there's absolutely no unity even come together and do something like that. So.
I agree. I believe that it will take unity first, because it is something like us too. I often think about us reclaiming back ancestral land, and it's hard enough with the countries that we are still established in, let alone more predominantly Asian or Arab in the northern regions of Africa or East. For me, my fear is that with everything that white supremacy does, they destroy it before they allow people to use it. We see it with Yemen, Patra, all the classical, all the tourist sites being destroyed, traditional monuments being destroyed under what ISIS would say is fikr, or something that's not Islam related, so it can be destroyed, so therefore destroying everything that doesn't represent the conquered empire. I think that they will destroy the pyramids and the Sphinx if we ever did try to reclaim it. That's one of my fears. What do you think about that? If it was ever successful in reclaiming our ancestral land, I believe that those monuments, those wonders would come down. They'll rather us not be able to re-understand how to use the energy there. What do you think?
I don't know how constructive it is for us to be worried about any of the 7 wonders when the problem is racism, white supremacy, and those statues are not any of my personal concerns or monuments. I'm trying to personally focus on the problem, not any old relics left by our ancestors. Any other hosts want to chime in? You have 3 more minutes on the broadcast.
Yeah, this is Kwaku. I'll comment. I believe, that the 7 wonders of the world are there because of white supremacy. Those became such monuments because due to the mistreatment of people on the planet. So I feel that when the system ends, those monuments may serve no significance. That's just my opinion.
Thank you, Kwaku. Just to comment back, I think, 7 wonders, using that terminology, maybe I shouldn't have used that, but I believe most structures that were built prior to any European major dynasty has its purpose. So from what I understand about the pyramids in Giza, those pyramids stand underneath where would be, I'm not sure exactly the terminology, but what the pyramid function helps to do is to level the tectonic plates, which stop the spread of, I can't remember the name of the rock, but it stops the separation of the sea and prevents earthquakes. And that is apparently one of the main reasons for those pyramids. So its structure, I believe, serves more of a purpose there. Otherwise, maybe it would have already been destroyed, if that makes sense, in terms of white supremacy covering what's not theirs. But that's the only way that I would comment. I believe some of those structures are important to the Earth's structure and existence.
I would have to agree with you, Mike. Definitely. I feel that the purpose that they serve now, I don't know enough about that. White supremacy is brain trash to me, so I don't know much about things that are important or should be important. I do know that racism is an issue and that needs to be solved. But very, very great perspective. Thank you for adding that.
Of course.
All right. Thank you guys. Thanks for all the callers listening in. Stick with us. But we have reached the 3-hour mark. We're gonna perhaps longer. We will next week. We'll perhaps have a longer broadcast. But we're gonna end it where we said we would at the 3-hour mark. Just to be concise. for everyone's time.
But before we go, could you tell us where we can be reached?
Oh yeah, so we have a YouTube. You can find us at Calendaring RWS Book Club on YouTube, and you can also find us at CRWS at CWS Book Club on Instagram and on Facebook at Counter Racist Logic, and we're also on Anchor FM at Calendaring RWS Book Club. And this broadcast, you're probably going to find it on YouTube, but I'm going to post it everywhere. So, but I will give the host a moment to give final closing comments. Any listeners want to chime in before we close out, but please keep it concise because we are over the 3-minute limit, 3-hour mark. And my closing comments is that it was a great broadcast. Thanks to everyone who listened, and see you next week.
Closing comments. I just wanted to let everybody know about the CRWS Book Club. We are found on all those sites, but we are definitely seeking out and recruiting fellow counter-racists. Anybody who's interested in solving this problem, doing something about the problem, please reach out and join the book club. I believe reading books is one of the ways to solve the problem, and will definitely eliminate the confusion.
Yeah, this is N. I also want to second what Q has reiterated about the book club, Countering Racism, White Supremacy Book Club, open to non-white people who are interested in solving the problem. If you are a non-white person, you definitely should be interested in solving the problem, but if you're not, I understand the level of brain trashing that's been occurring in our society. Appreciate y'all, the host, for your due diligence and for your articulate way of speaking to the people. Reading is more important than watching television. That's my time.
This is Quaky Jamal for my closing comments. Very much along the lines, thank you for everyone coming. 0526 for putting on a great radio show, a great atmosphere to allow us to think and get these thoughts off, you know. One thing I will say is that on this journey, I have definitely realized what Mr. N and Quaku were saying. Read more books. You know, all the knowledge is in there. That's how our ancestors have passed down their knowledge to communicate with us. I'm realizing that myself, you know, and it is very true the saying, you know, if you don't want black people to know something, put it in a book. I'm gonna mute myself.
Hi, this is Erlum. I just wanted to say that, join the book club. If you are interested in being counter-racist, if you're interested about learning how to produce justice and replace white supremacy with justice. And thank you, everyone, for this really fruitful and informative conversation.
Finally. Thank you. This is CJ. Everyone knows when it comes to history, the first thing that they like to say in history is that the reason why we learn history is to not repeat ourselves. So education is top key to know where you come from, why are we the way we are, why the system is the way it is. So we're just trying to spread the word, educate ourselves as well as learn from others. So I'm glad for this radio show. The more knowledge we bring to ourselves, the more that we can solve the issues that we have under this system.
Thank you, everyone, and CRWS Radio, countering racism, white supremacy radio, signing out.